What if the quality of your entire day was already decided before you finished your first cup of tea? Most people believe the day shapes them. Something happens and they respond. Someone says something difficult and the mood shifts. The news delivers its weight and it is carried forward into every hour that follows. This feels like simply how mornings work. Buddhism suggests the opposite. The first few minutes of consciousness, before the world rushes in with its demands and noise, hold more power over the quality of the day than everything that follows combined. And yet most people wake up and immediately hand that power to something else. The phone, the news, the anxiety already forming before the eyes have fully opened. The day begins in reaction rather than intention, and it never quite recovers. We were taught that morning routines are about what we do: cold water, exercise, journaling. But Buddhist wisdom points to something before all of that: what we decide. 7 small interior decisions, each taking no more than a single breath, that determine whether the day belongs to you or to everything already pulling at you. These decisions were never taught to us. We were handed alarm clocks and schedules, not the interior tools that make those schedules worth keeping. The Buddha observed that a mind waking with clarity and intention moves through the world differently than a mind waking already grasping. Not because the world is different, because the mind meeting it is. Today we will walk through 7 of those decisions together, small enough to begin tomorrow, powerful enough to change everything. And the 7th one is the one most people skip entirely. It may also be the one that matters most. Let us begin with the very first moment of consciousness, before the feet touch the floor, before anything is required of you. In that single unguarded breath, the first decision is already waiting. Decision 1. Decide what this day is for before the world tells you. The alarm sounds, and within seconds, before the room has fully come into focus, the mind is already running. What needs to be done today? What went wrong yesterday? What might go wrong before noon? The day has not yet begun, and the mind is already managing it, already in problem-solving mode, already bracing. By the time breakfast is finished, the day feels less like something to inhabit and more like something to get through. This is how most mornings begin, not in intention, in momentum. In Buddhist teaching, the mental factor that precedes every action has a name: cetana, intention. The Buddha taught that intention is the seed of all experience. What is planted in the first moments of the day grows quietly through every hour that follows. Not because the day obeys our intentions, but because the mind that holds an intention meets each moment differently than the mind that simply reacts to it. Here is the distinction worth carrying. A day entered with intention is not the same as a day entered with a to-do list. A to-do list asks, what do I need to extract from this day? Intention asks something different. What quality do I want to bring to it? Patience, presence, openness, kindness. These are not tasks. They are the way the tasks get done. An archer who aims before drawing the bow hits a different target than one who draws first and aims after. The effort is identical. The outcome is not. Before the feet touch the floor tomorrow morning, pause for one breath and ask silently, what is one quality I want to carry into this day? Name it. That naming, quiet and unhurried, is the first decision. Once intention is set, the second decision follows immediately, and it is one that most people make unconsciously in the wrong direction every single morning. Decision 2. Decide to meet the body with gratitude before meeting it with complaint. The second awareness of most mornings, arriving just after the alarm and just before the to-do list, is physical. Something aches. Something is stiffer than it was a few years ago. Something moves more slowly than the mind still expects it to. The body is assessed like a machine running its own damage report before the day's work begins. A quiet inventory of limitations, conducted so automatically, so habitually, that it no longer registers as a choice. It simply feels like honesty. But it is not the whole of honesty. In Buddhist teaching, katanyuta, gratitude, is not sentimentality. It is accurate seeing. The recognition of what has actually been given, clearly and without distortion. And what has been given every morning without exception is this: a body that carried you through yesterday, through everything yesterday asked of it, and showed up again this morning to do it once more. Noticing what aches is honest. Beginning, there is a choice. You would not greet an old friend who traveled a great distance to be with you by cataloging everything worn and tired about their appearance. The body that has traveled the entire distance of your life to reach this morning deserves at least the same courtesy. Before rising tomorrow, place one hand gently on the chest. Feel one breath move in and out. Say silently, "Thank you for another morning," 3 words, 10 seconds. The entire tone of the day shifts. Gratitude opens the body. The third decision opens the mind. And it requires saying no to something most people say yes to before they are even fully awake. Decision 3. Decide to give the first moments to silence rather than to noise. Most people check their phone within 60 seconds of waking, some within 30, some before the eyes have fully adjusted to the light in the room. Not because something urgent is waiting, not because the world cannot manage another 5 minutes without being monitored, but from habit, from the low-grade discomfort of an unoccupied mind that has learned, through years of repetition, to reach for input before stillness has a chance to settle. The result is this: the first thought of the day belongs to someone else's agenda, someone else's emergency, someone else's version of what is important and urgent and worth the first minutes of consciousness. In Buddhist teaching, sati, mindfulness, present moment awareness, is described as the quality that, when cultivated at the beginning of the day, quietly protects the mind through everything that follows. Not by making the day easier, by keeping the mind rooted in itself rather than swept into whatever arrives. The first input of the day sets the frequency the mind operates on for hours afterward. This is not metaphor. This is how attention works. Silence is not emptiness. It is the condition in which your own voice, your own values, your own intentions can actually be heard before the day's noise makes hearing them nearly impossible. Giving the first 5 minutes to silence is not a luxury available only to monks and people with unhurried mornings. It is an act of self-governance available to anyone willing to put the phone down for the length of 5 slow breaths. A musician tunes the instrument before the performance begins. 5 minutes of silence in the morning is that tuning. Everything played afterward is cleaner, truer, more genuinely your own. Tomorrow morning, before the phone, before the news, before any input of any kind, simply sit, simply breathe. Let the day begin in your own voice. Silence creates the space. The fourth decision determines what fills it. And this one, in my experience, is the decision that most directly determines whether the day feels meaningful or merely busy. Decision 4. Decide what you will notice rather than what you will fix. The morning mind, left to its own habits, moves immediately toward management. What needs attention today? What was left unfinished yesterday? What is fragile, at risk, requiring vigilance? A kind of scanning that feels responsible, even virtuous, because it is oriented toward taking care of things. But there is a cost to it that accumulates quietly over years. The capacity for wonder, for simply noticing the ordinary beauty of a morning, gets crowded out by the habit of management until it is barely accessible at all. In Buddhist teaching, sampajanya, clear comprehension, is the quality of knowing not just what is happening, but what is actually worth attending to. The Buddha paired this always with mindfulness, because awareness alone is not enough. A mind can be fully awake and still spend itself entirely on what is broken rather than what is whole. Here is the distinction. A mind trained to fix sees problems everywhere, because problems are everywhere, and a mind searching for them will always find more than enough. A mind trained to notice sees the same world and finds something else alongside the problems. The particular quality of light through a window, the sound of a house before it fully wakes, the warmth of a cup held in both hands. Both are real. Only one nourishes the life doing the noticing. 2 gardeners walk the same garden each morning. One looks for what needs pruning. One looks for what is blooming. The garden is identical. What they carry back inside with them is not. Each morning, before the fixing begins, name one thing that is simply beautiful, not useful, not important, not requiring anything from you, just present and worth seeing. Noticing what is beautiful trains the eye. The 5th decision trains something deeper. The way we choose to hold everything the day will bring before any of it has arrived. Decision 5. Decide to meet whatever comes as a teacher rather than as an obstacle. Before the difficult thing has even arrived, the mind has already met it. The email that might carry bad news, already dreaded before the inbox is opened. The conversation that might go badly, already rehearsed in the worst direction before a single word is exchanged. The person who might be difficult, already met with impatience before they walk through the door. The day prepared for as if difficulty were the most certain thing it would deliver. And then when difficulty arrives, as it sometimes does, it confirms exactly what was already expected. The resistance was already in place. The suffering was already underway. In Buddhist teaching, dukkha arises not from the difficult thing itself, but from the mind's refusal to allow it to simply be what it is. The resistance to what is happening creates a second layer of suffering on top of the first. The event is one thing. The war with the event is another, and it is entirely optional. An obstacle is something standing in the way of where you are going. A teacher is something showing you what you needed to know. The event itself is identical. The decision about how to meet it changes everything that follows. The same rain that floods a field left unprepared nourishes a field that was ready to receive it. The rain does not change, only the preparation does. Each morning, before the day begins, set one quiet interior intention. Whatever comes today, I will ask first, what is this showing me? Not what is this doing to me? What is this showing me? That single shift from resistance to curiosity is the fifth decision. Meeting difficulty as a teacher requires a particular kind of inner steadiness. The sixth decision is where that steadiness is built. It is also the simplest decision on this list. Decision 6. Decide to connect before you perform. The morning moves through itself like a choreography that no one designed, but everyone follows. Coffee made, clothes found, bags located. The small logistics of a household getting itself ready for the day. And the people in that household, the ones you love most, present in the same rooms, moving through the same kitchen, but not quite met. A word exchanged here, a nod there. Everyone already accelerating toward their own version of the day before the door has opened. And then a strange thing. The loneliness that follows, not from being alone, but from having spent the morning with people you love without ever quite touching them. In Buddhist teaching, metta, loving kindness, is not described as a feeling to wait for when the conditions are right. It is a decision, a deliberate cultivation of warmth toward the people in our lives, made consciously before the day's performance has fully begun and taken everything with it. Moving through the morning efficiently is one kind of mourning. Pausing, even briefly, to actually see the person standing beside you is another kind entirely. Efficiency without connection empties the day of the very thing that makes it worth being efficient for. A tree with deep roots bends in any wind without breaking. Connection in the morning is that root system. Whatever the day delivers, whatever pulls at you or tests you or demands more than you plan to give, what was grounded in the morning holds. Before the day begins, pause with one person for 30 seconds of genuine presence, not to discuss anything, not to manage anything, simply to see them. If you are alone, offer that same presence to yourself. That pause is the sixth decision. And now the seventh decision. The one most people skip, the one I left until last, because in my experience, it is the one that holds all the others together. Decision 7. Decide that this day, ordinary as it is enough. There is a dissatisfaction so quiet and so constant that most people have stopped noticing it as dissatisfaction at all. The morning is fine, but not quite right. Not enough time. Not the weather that was hoped for. Not the version of the day that would finally feel like the real one. A low-grade sense that the meaningful day, the one worth fully showing up for, is always located somewhere slightly ahead. Tomorrow, next week, when the circumstances have arranged themselves into something more deserving of full presence. And so the ordinary Tuesday passes, unlived, not because it offered nothing, but because it was never quite accepted as enough. In Buddhist teaching, santosha, contentment, is not resignation. It is not the settling of someone who has given up wanting more. It is the active recognition that this moment, ordinary and imperfect and unremarkable as it appears, is the only place where life can actually be lived, not the ideal version. This one, Accepting the ordinary day is not the same as settling for less. The extraordinary life is not made of extraordinary days. It is made entirely of ordinary days that were fully inhabited. A single ordinary morning, met with complete acceptance and genuine presence, contains more real living than a year of days spent waiting for better conditions to arrive. A candle does not wait for a grander room before giving its light. It simply burns completely in whatever space it finds itself. That completeness is the whole of its offering. And here is what the Buddhist contemplation of impermanence, Marangasati, adds to this. This particular ordinary morning will not come again. Not this light. Not this version of your life. Not this specific configuration of everything you have and everyone you love. The decision to find it enough is also the only way to actually have it. Before breakfast, say quietly to yourself, "This day is enough. I am enough for this day." Not as an affirmation to convince yourself of something uncertain, as a recognition of what is already quietly true. 7 decisions, each taking no longer than a breath. Together, they build something the busiest schedule in the world cannot provide on its own, a day that belongs to you. We began by asking whether the quality of the entire day was already decided before breakfast. Having walked through these 7 decisions together, the answer is yes, but not in the way most productivity advice would have you believe. Not decided by what you do, decided by what you choose, quietly and deliberately, in the space before the world arrives and fills every available moment with its own agenda. You have been waking up for decades and doing your best with the morning you were given. No one handed you these 7 decisions. You were handed alarm clocks and responsibilities and the quiet expectation that usefulness begins the moment consciousness does. These decisions ask nothing dramatic, only that the first minutes of each morning belong to you, truly and deliberately, before they belong to everything else. Decide what the day is for, before the world decides for you. Meet the body with gratitude before meeting it with complaint. Give the first moments to silence rather than to noise. Decide what to notice rather than what to fix. Meet whatever comes as teacher rather than as obstacle. Connect before you perform. Decide that this ordinary day is enough. The morning does not belong to your schedule. It belongs to you. Every day, for the rest of your life, that is the first decision worth making. May your mornings be yours, may your days be lived, may you be well, present, and free. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. If this is a practice you want to return to, subscribe. Not for the content. For the morning reminder that the day can begin differently. If one of these 7 decisions landed, a like lets me know it reached you. If someone came to mind while you were watching, share this with them. A better morning for them begins with you. And in the comments, which of these 7 decisions will you make tomorrow morning? Tell me below.